Hey everyone, I apologize first of all if this goes off prematurely. It's been known to do that at times. But anyway, I didn't watch Raw last night. Well, mostly because I was one of those viewers that I'm pretty sure did the same thing, and that's tune in and watch the 2-hour Charlie Brown Christmas celebration on ABC. And what's funny about this is the WWE, they always complain, or at least Vince McMahon or some higher ups complain that the ratings, dropping during this time of year due to Monday Night Football and stuff, and that's partially true. And they might even say, well, it's also the additional holiday specials that might get shown on a Monday. That's true too. That's true too. But here's why I think that's freaking BS. If you catch my drift, here's why I think that's freaking BS. One, if what's going on was all due to the football and the holiday specials and all that causing for ratings drops, then why in previous years has that not been a factor? I'll tell you why. Because at least the WWE in previous years has proven that they can gain your interest, they can garner your interest. Now, I understand that right now they have a depleted roster. Mostly some people are out with injuries, some people are questionable to return, some people have time off. But, I am one in the agreement, folks, that the WWE, they cannot blame the ratings dropping because of other programming. They cannot blame the fact that, oh, well, we have certain people out because they're injured and, we don't know when they're going to be back, or they're going to be back at this time frame, You can't blame that either. What you've got to blame in reality is yourselves. I've said this before, and a lot of other people have said this before. WWE's got no one to blame but themselves. Now, I know Schleg Daddy came out and said, hey, everybody's to blame. And that is partially true. We are all to blame, trying to get that right. We are all to blame for the depletion in what would be a great WWE product. We are all to blame. It is mostly the WWE's fault, but when we continue to contribute to the problem by buying tickets and going to see the events live, or paying $59 or $49 or even $69 or $79 for a pay-per-view, depending on which event it is, which pay-per-view it is, I should say, or even doing what a lot of us are doing, and that's shilling out the $9.99 on the WWE Network because it has more than it's basically got a lot of content that we actually are interested in, that we enjoy watching, that, what he said is true. We are partially to blame because of all that. We go out, we buy the tickets to go to the live events, we buy the merchandise, we buy the action figures if we collect them or give them away as gifts during the holidays or birthdays. We tune in every Monday or Thursday evening, or we watch the snippets, the clips on WWE.com or the WWE's YouTube page. Yeah, we all have a contribution in the fault of in the blaming of what's happening, the fault that has caused the WWE product itself to become what it is. But the WWE takes most of that blame. You see, WWE has no one to blame but themselves. Again, like I said, you could throw some of that blame on a lot of us, the fans, the corporate PCs and all that, the sponsors, the anti-groups, if you will, like Nothing against those, nothing against those groups. Let me make that clear. Nothing against those groups, but those groups to where you have superstars and even people like Stephanie McMahon going out and talking about we're against bullying, which is a good message. The Be a Star campaign is a good message. I'm not denying that. But the thing is, when you have a lot of these factors, these associations and partnerships, and you got basically all these PCs and PRs that are basically holding you, that basically you got to answer to, the WWE's got no one to blame but themselves. Because the WWE, they have a lot of money on their hands. And they should have enough to come out and tell these PR and HRs and whatever groups out there saying, hey, look, we understand that you want us to be a more family-friendly product, but, we're going through a transition right now to where we're no one wants to see that anymore. They want to see what they see elsewhere. They want to see what they see on the independents. They want to see what they see in places like a TNA, maybe sometimes an RH. They want to see, emphasis on storylines and wrestling. They want to see what they see in NXT. I mean, why do you think NXT is mostly on the WWE Network and Hulu Plus? Why do you think that is? It's because they can get away with more on the network. They don't have to answer through the network. They don't have to really answer to any outside sponsors or anything, okay? Yeah, they might have a commercial here and there, but that's about it. And here's the thing, though. Here's what's funny. Here's what's hypocritical. Back when they were a TV-14 product, they still had the sponsors. They still had people sponsoring the events, associating with them. I think they were even doing these anti-bullying campaigns and stuff at that time. And Make-A-Wishes and all that. I think they were doing that at that time. And yet now their excuse is because they're associated with these groups, these organizations and all that, is why they've toned down. You have Triple H and Stephanie coming out and saying, oh, well, one of the reasons we've toned down is because, now we're parents ourselves, and, what we did in the past, we wouldn't want our kids to watch. With all due respect to Triple H and Stephanie, the point, that is hypocritical to its highest point, okay? I mean, I understand as you grow up, you get older and all that, and you become a parent yourself, or an uncle, or a grandparent, or an aunt, that there are certain things you don't want your kids watching or playing. I have, several nephews that throughout the years, they would try to play certain games that they were not allowed to play because they were M-rated. Well, they couldn't play it here in our house, me and my mom's house, but I can't say anything else about where they live, but still, you get the idea. They couldn't basically watch or play that kind of stuff. I mean, I think even in one of my nephew's house, of course, he's about 7, 8 years old. He's 8 years old, I should say. He wasn't allowed to, he's not allowed to play certain games, but now they're becoming more lenient because he's getting older. They're becoming more lenient because he's getting older, and because he's getting older, in a sense, like I said, they're being more lenient, not that much. I mean, there's certain games they may let him play, but there's certain games he will not. They will not. So, but you kind of get the point. It's like, yeah, you can understand that. But let me ask you people out there. If Monday Night Raw comes on at 8 o'clock, 7 Central, and pretty much at that time you're getting kids, you probably have already ate dinner, you're probably letting the kids watch the holiday specials because it's the time of year. What is the problem then? What is the problem if they're watching it in another room? I don't get it. Or what's the problem if you're tuning in to that special while Raw is on and your DVR in Raw, but you're watching that special and then you send your kids to bed. What's the excuse? There is no excuse. I mean, I get the fact that we're in an age, we're in an era where a lot of these mainstream products are not, not so acceptable anymore. But, what they see is not so acceptable anymore. But here's what I don't get. Here's what I don't understand. USA Network airs a lot of programming that has a TV-14 rating. And yet Raw is the WWE product's the only PG rated stuff? I don't really get that. Here's why I think WWE has to take most of this blame, if not a huge chunk of it, is the fact that you're on a network that airs movies and shows that have a TV-14 rating. One of the highest shows on Monday night for USA is Raw, whether we like it or not, and yet you make that TV PG. What sense does that make? It doesn't make any sense. Now, I'm not trying to argue that they need to go back to 14. I'm not arguing that. What I'm saying is that even with a PG rating, you can do so much more. You know that there are programs out there around the world and around the country that do TV PG SLV or TV PG LV. Basically saying parental guidance suggested for language and violence. It's not just TV PG and that's it. I think when they started doing the PG rating, they had the V, and I think they had the LV under the PG rating. But where did that go? It disappeared. You see, what's going on here is the WWE and the creative team and the high-ranking officials and all that, the people at Stamford, Connecticut offices, have become so PC, have become so, so afraid, so protective, if not afraid, of what public relations will think about the product if they decide to kind of throw in and sprinkle in very slowly that ruthless aggression era or attitude era like style into this PG product. I think what it is, they are afraid, they are fearful that they're going to get negative backlash, and that they're going to have groups, parental groups after parental groups, PC groups after PC groups, PR groups after PR groups, HR groups after HR groups, coming after them saying, oh, well, you promised you wouldn't do this. You're hypocrites. So now we're going to try everything to get you guys off the air because kids should watch that. Seriously? Seriously. Let me remind you of something. Let me remind you guys of something, okay? When the WWE was in its 14 era, it still advertised toys that kids bought, still advertised championship replica toy belts kids bought. They still sold tickets that parents bought and took their kids to see the events with. And what else? What else? Basically they did all this stuff. They did all basically the same kind of stuff that you're saying, that the WWE is saying is the reason they're staying PG. Well, they were 14. They were TV 14 and they did all this. They did everything similar to what they're doing now. They sold the toys, kids bought them. They sold toy replica belts, kids got them. They sold tickets to the events that the parents bought for them and their kids and went to see. That happened. So basically saying, being afraid of PR saying you're being hypocritical because you're going against what you said you wouldn't go back to. You're going against what you said and you said you wouldn't go back to that style. You know, the WWE needs to wake up and realize they've got a lot of money and they could be able to put on any kind of product they want. Now, when I talk about WWE taking most of the blame, I'm not lying there. Because I think one of the blames that they have to take is the fact that they allowed themselves to get talked into doing 3 hours of Raw in USA. And that's a fact. You take a look maybe at the Hulu edition of Raw, which airs the next day, and it's condensed to that 90-minute, 2-hour block. And I can almost guarantee more people watch that, even if it's bad, even if that edition of Raw is bad, more people watch that than they would the 3 hours. Why? Because they're getting all the good elements that would make Raw good, condensed in that time frame. Why do you think NXT is such a hit for the WWE? Not just because it's on the network, but because they condense everything that they need into 1 hour, 45 to 1 hour package, and they get and basically with the storylines and the characters, they get it all straight across for people to understand and enjoy and want to tune in and see more. And yet the WWE can't even do that with 3 hours. Now don't get me wrong, they've had some good 3-hour shows. But right now the WWE is sorely lacking in that. And it might be the fact that whether it's a creative team or not, that I guess they're starting to realize, or something's starting to happen to, I think, they, and mostly the fans, are realizing that WWE cannot cram so much into 3 hours. Cannot do as much with 3 hours. There's so much you can do in 3 hours that sometimes it's going to mess you up. It is. It's going to screw with your head. It's going to mess you up to a point that you are going to want some peace and quiet. You are basically going to be like, let me the hell out of here. I mean, why do you think some writers have some creative writers or bookers for the company have either been let go or flat out quit? Because it's too much for them. It's like, okay, write for this, blah, 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 blah. Okay, we got this one now, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it doesn't work. And I think part of that blame comes from that 3-hour block. I mean, I don't mind 3 hours of WWE, but here's how I would do it. I would do 2 hours of Raw, and then I'd do maybe 1 hour for an after show. Basically take what would be like your pre-show or your post-show that you've done before, put it on afterwards. Kind of do like a Raw reaction for 1 hour or so. Kind of get the reaction from people. Do a Raw reaction. Do something to where you're talking about what happened on Raw just now, so that people can maybe tune into the condensed version on Hulu, or at least, get people set up. I mean, WWE has done this before. I remember sometimes before a big pay-per-view, either it was a in your house like, even if it was an in your house like pay-per-view, I remember WWE would do this. They would spend an extra hour or half hour talking about that pay-per-view, hyping it up. So that's what I would do. If I'm WWE, I would take that extra hour, or maybe condense it to a half hour, and at least catch people up on what happened on Raw, get them ready for the next week's Raw, maybe getting them invested for SmackDown, maybe get them interested in NXT, get them all hyped up for what's to be in the next week or so, in the next, like I say, within the next 7 days, get them hyped up for that, and especially with a pay-per-view, so that way maybe you can generate that interest again. You're not dragging things along. And 2 hours makes it actually better for the that's the bird, I apologize. But 2 hours actually makes it a lot better and enjoyable. I mean, Nitro tried 3 hours, and guess what? It didn't work, and they were smart enough to go back to